So for this week, I'm going to be answering questions 1 and 2. So question 1, according to Schwab's essay in the Reader, what are the 4 types of questions? Please name them, give an example of each. And Schwab suggests that empirical questions can produce interpretive trouble. What does he mean, and can you give an example of how this could happen in research? So the 4 types of questions we can ask are empirical questions, aesthetic questions, moral questions, and questions of interpretation. So empirical questions are answered by measuring, counting, or observing a result. So for an example, an empirical question could be, how far was your run? And aesthetic questions are about what is subjectively pleasing to the senses. And an example question here could be asking if someone likes the scent of perfume or cologne that you are wearing. Moral questions call for judgment about what is right and wrong. And so here an example question could be discussing the Holocaust and what your thoughts are about the treatment of those who were affected. And finally, there are questions of interpretation, which essentially ask, what does this thing mean? And the vaguest question you can ask in this form is, what is the meaning of life? And so Schwab suggests that there are problems with empirical questions, more specifically with them producing interpretive trouble. So the facts may be clear, however, they do not always speak for themselves, and this causes people to have different interpretations of those facts, which can make answering empirical questions so much more difficult. It can also be very difficult to prove an interpretation, even if it has been based on previously answered empirical questions. So in research, this could be interpreting data, which might be different depending on the person who interprets it. And so for the second question, according to Schwab's essay, what are nihilism and fantasism? Why do nihilism and fantasism lead to dead ends in sociological questions? And what does being sociologically mindful mean? How does sociological mindfulness help us get closer to the truth? And so nihilism is the belief that life is meaningless. And here in this article, the meaning is that the truth is meaningless. And so here the example phrase is that anyone can make up numbers, you might as well believe in what you want. Fantasism is the obsessive concern over something. And here in the article, it is presented that there is only one truth, correct truth, one and one alone. And so the example phrase here is that there is only one truth and my people know it. All other beliefs are false or insane. And so both of these lead to dead ends in sociological questions, because for nihilism, conversations become meaningless, and for fantasism, there is no hope of resolving any conflict. So being sociologically mindful means that you are aware that you can never obtain the absolute and correct truth, and that you are also open to other opinions and interpretations outside of your own. This mindset brings us a lot closer to the truth because it allows us to think objectively about the data and try to exclude any other biases from our minds so that we can solely focus on the question at hand and not cloud our judgment, essentially. And so I'm going to answer Natara's questions for this week. So the first question being, Schwab talks about the interpretive trouble, and is there any way that researchers can avoid this difference in interpretation? If no, why? And so in my opinion, I believe it is very difficult to ask anyone to avoid interpreting any information at all. I think it is a basic human instinct to interpret any of the stimulus that we receive on a daily basis. And I think that the interpretations or the trouble that comes with them is just part of collecting data. However, I don't think it is necessarily a bad thing. I think what we should do from now on is to take it and learn from it. And so we can collect the different interpretations from many different people, and then you can further discuss that data or that question in a much deeper way to further understand the question or the problem, or even further discover things about the data itself. And the second question is, in what ways can we push people towards having sociological mindfulness? And so I think that having sociological mindfulness starts with parenting, as well as the way that people are instructed at a very young age, specifically in schools. And so parents are the first teachers that young children have. So the more that parents try to have sociological mindfulness and to teach their kids to do so, the better off they will be. And the same thing goes for schools, so continue to push students to want to find the right answer, but also accept that there are many different ways to approach a problem. And then my 2 questions for the week are, why do you think it is important to report any research that you do? And what downfalls are there for those who do not practice sociological mindfulness?